Why don't we talk about Ryan Murphy's newest show, Hollywood on Netflix? Um, Ryan Murphy, being the creator of a lot of FX shows and other very
Mhm.
famous shows on Fox like Glee, American Horror Story, People versus OJ, People
Pose.
versus series, Pose. Very famous creator. Now signed a deal with Netflix to produce some shows. We talked about The Politician. Now his second show, Hollywood, talking about Hollywood in the 1950s. This fictionalized story about a bunch of, I guess we'll say, outcasts in the society then, mostly outcasts in that
Yep.
society then, trying to make it big and kind of centering around the script about Peg. Uh, what's her last name? Something with this
Enswell?
whistle.
Enswells? Yeah,
Entwistle, is that right?
something like that. Yeah. Who
And
jumped off the Hollywood sign? Real
yeah,
story.
very famous story. Uh, and I found this show to be pretty fun, but just I think where it kind of ended up just left me be like, huh. I thought the show was going to go in a very different direction, and kind of disappointed with where it ended. How did you feel with this mini series by Ryan Murphy?
Yeah, so I enjoyed Hollywood a lot. I thought it was pretty fun the whole time. There's some things that stand out pretty clearly, like strong attention to period detail, uh, wide range, strong cast, as one
Mhm.
expects from a Ryan Murphy production, and generally just kind of a fun time and just going
Yeah.
through the story. But in and I definitely like it a lot more than The Politician, which I thought just had a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of flaws that prevented it from being successful. I think Hollywood, for what it's trying to do, is successful, but it still has a lot of like the things that hold it back that we expect from lesser Ryan Murphy shows. Namely, that it just kind of lacks a lot of subtlety and
Hmm.
it jumps around in tone enough, yet doesn't almost commit to jumping around in tone enough. Like it's and somehow there's not enough conflict in this story. So like there's some faults for sure, and it might be a little self-congratulatory with this kind of obvious alt history presenting a so war message about inclusion and representation. Yeah, I still had a good time. I think some of the performances really stood out. So I like only 7 episodes, kind of an interesting pace because it starts off with a 2-part pilot, right?
Hmm.
And you almost feel like you're building up to something. It really starts out strong, but then yeah, it kind of fizzles at the end where it gets a little more predictable and maybe doesn't quite hit as hard as it hoped it would. But I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun. Um, I think where the show really excels is the way that it kind of um, it, it uses this time period, which I believe is very beloved, um, and there's a lot of affection for it,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it puts people as fictionalized versions of real people. You have Rock Hudson appearing
Mm-hmm.
in this. You have the woman from McDaniel from Gone with the
Uh,
Wind,
Hattie McDaniel.
Hattie McDaniel.
Mm-hmm.
You have Henry Wilson,
Mm-hmm.
played by Jim Parsons, which I want to talk about in a second. How you felt about that performance, and then you have these people who are kind of like you know real fictional characters who are just kind of playing an avatar for people during that time who went through similar things, and I think it really like weaves that in and out very well to tell this story about what Hollywood was like, kind of this like dark, seedy underbelly, and how some of these inner workings probably actually went during that time, so people could get by or could make money or could get these opportunities with these studio heads. And I think that's all interesting, as well as really exposing the things that aren't talked about as much, like the culture of gay men and gay people in
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood at that time, and kind of how they had to keep that a secret. I think the place I found myself to be most, I think, disappointed, and I guess this might be a good place to jump off, is you talked about the lack of conflict in this, and when you have all these marginalized people, you have black people, gay black people in this
Mm-hmm.
story who face such little uh, discrimination, I would say, or the lack of discrimination that they face. It felt very unrealistic in a lot of
Yeah, that's
senses.
that. I mean, so much of it's just really implausible at the end of
Right.
the day.
I mean, the Oscars that year is way more diverse than any Oscars I think we've ever had.
Yeah, and that's the 1948 Oscars on the show.
Right. Just pretty. I mean, the one scene, I guess, or I guess there's two scenes. There's the burning of the cross on the front lawn of everybody's making the movie, making Meg, and then there's them spitting at the car when um, the actress and the director are driving
Mhm.
in. Darren Criss and I forgot what the
Laura
actress's
Harrier,
name is.
Camille, and
Yes,
Raymond.
yes. When they were driving in, that's like the only two scenes where you really see that. And I guess there's some scenes when at the Oscars people are booing and not taking
Mhm.
pictures because Rock Hudson and the writer are on the red carpet together. And but
Yep.
other than that, Jim Parsons is pretty emotionally abusive as Henry Wilson throughout, and that's some tough stuff. But it just kind of left me feeling like everything's gonna work out, and just feeling. I honestly thought it was gonna end up where the movie flops or it doesn't hit, and like everything kind of falls apart. But they're just applauded for the attempt.
Yeah, right.
But
I mean, and that was kind of interesting too because they kind of set up Samara Weaving's character Claire to be this like rival figure for Camille,
yep.
and she's the blonde white woman, the daughter of the studio head. Of course, she'll get the role and not the more deserving, but happens to be black actor, right? But no, like Camille gets the role, and then Claire is really supportive and nice, and actually gets her best scenes after that. Like it's like almost like a false start in terms of setting up some kind of butt heads to butt, and like Rock Hudson I think is an interesting character here because I mean so much of it is with regard to Henry Wilson. We'll get to that, but I mean it's very different from the Rock Hudson I think people know because he was truly a star, and in this story he's kind of just bumbling into like bit parts and kind of an ass actor. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of amusing. But like again, like Rob Reiner, he plays Ace, the head of Ace Studios, which is like our stand-in for Paramount, and he's set up to be this like casting couch, old school like dipshit, and then he kind of gets redeemed at the end right before he dies, and I was like, oh, also didn't see this coming, kind of
Right.
weird. But then it's like, oh well, the legal people that they deleted the film, they burned it, the reels are gone, there it is, and then they immediately resolve that right away.
Yep.
It's like, they just never kept a conflict going because even Henry Wilson takes turns, like helping them out. Remember when he kills the story about Avis's thing with the tabloids, and like
Mm-hmm.
he's doing actually good things for everyone half the time, even if he's a dipshit. So it's like there just never was a consistent source of conflict, which I think makes the lack of resistance to certain obvious taboos of the time even more obvious. Like the fact that Camille and Raymond were in an interracial relationship during the Hays Code. They acknowledge the Hays Code on this show, yet it never comes up that they happen to be dating a white person and a black person. Like that doesn't come up at
Mm-hmm.
all on the show, and they're talking about the problems they're going to face. So it's like it kind of picked and choose what it wanted to go into, but I still had a good time because I think a lot of the performances I really liked. I think Dylan McDermott as Ernie, who that's based off Scotty Bowers, who's a very interesting figure to look into. He plays basically the pimp at the gas station, but he was just really really charming the whole time. And I
Yeah.
also really liked Joe Mantello, who plays Dick
Mm-hmm.
Samuels at Ace Studios, and also Holland Taylor as Ellen Kincaid. I thought they
Yep.
really kind of grounded everything because we kind of float in and out of the actors and the writers' lives throughout. So it's still a lot of fun, but you can definitely poke holes in it like a lot of Murphy shows.
No, I thought it was definitely a good time. It's a movie, or it's a movie. It's a seven part movie. No, it's a seven episode show. It goes by quick. And honestly, we're sitting here with a critical eye. I've had a couple people who've watched in my life that really just enjoyed the ending and like that it was a happy
Mm-hmm.
ending, and it actually kind of telegraphs that in a way, right? Because they have the original right of the script and it's going to end in tragedy, and then they kind of say, well, we can't have a black woman who jumps off this building, because it's what does that show to all the other black people who do watch this? So it kind of does end up with that like overcoming story at the end, which is
Yeah.
kind of an interesting thing too that they kind of set that up. I don't know what Murphy's doing next, but I find the choices he's made for Netflix very interesting, and I'm looking forward to it. And I mean, if he's going to be getting like Rob Reiner in like a a shows up in 3 episode type thing, I mean, how could you not be tuning into these shows at this
Yeah.
point? In my
Oh,
opinion,
of course. And I mean,
crazy.
they really spared no expense to recreate post-war golden age
Look
Hollywood.
great.
It looked awesome.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I think the ending's a little hokey, but I still enjoyed it. I started watching some
Mhm.
Oscar speeches afterwards. To be completely honest, like it was, I was feeling good, no doubt.
Yeah.
Um, and I liked, I really liked Laura Harrier as Camille as well. She's been someone
Yeah.
I've kind of been watching, since Spider-Man: Homecoming, and what she was in the Fahrenheit 451 thing for HBO, but all her scenes were cut, if I remember right. So like I've been waiting for her to have another like big role,
Yeah, she was
and
good.
she was good in this. You know, like all Murphy shows, there's a lot of frequent collaborators: McDermott, Darren Chris, etc.
I,
How
I
did
thought,
you like and David Cornsweet, who was in
yeah.
Politician as a River? He played
Mhm.
Jack in this. I think for Jack, uh, I really liked his role in kind of setting the story going, and he's probably strongest in those first 2 episodes when he's
Oh
setting the
yeah.
table for everything. I think maybe the presence of his wife, who obviously leaves him at the end, that almost like was unnecessary. Like she was just so underwritten and unnecessary, and yet all the other female characters in the show were really well written. So it just kind of felt like a superfluous add-on they maybe couldn't fix. I don't know. Um, but yeah, I like that presence as well. But yeah, I mean, tell me, how you feeling about Jim Parsons as Henry Wilson? Definitely almost leaning into the stereotype that is like a more like a predatory gay person. Yeah, it's coming, of course, from Parsons and Murphy, two gay men. So I guess you can let that go. But yeah, the tonal shifts are largely from Parsons' performance, scene to scene. So
Yes.
uh, I guess it depends how that hits for you, whether you enjoy it or not.
Yeah, it's just, and this is no fault of Parsons. When you've played a character who has become so much a part of the culture for good and for bad. Some people love Big Bang Theory, and
Yep.
a lot of people do not love Big Bang Theory. To then see him playing this extremely different role where he's so cynical and, like you mentioned, abusive, and you know, really uh, profiting off of his abuse and off of his power. It's just it was tough for me at times, and I felt like Parsons gave his best performances near the end. Like when he was kind of like this crazed like producer trying to get credit, and then feeling like he was like scorned, but kind of coming around. I felt like that was when I believed him the most, when he was like dancing around with Rock Hudson in his um, in his apartment or whatever, his house. I was like, this is like where this role feels like it's kind of losing it for me a little bit. Just feels like Parsons is hamming this up now. Um, so I don't know. My mileage varied on it, but I was wondering how you felt. Like, can you separate Parsons from that Sheldon? I don't even know Sheldon's last name.
I don't know Sheldon's either. Um,
I just know
yeah,
Sheldon.
yeah, Sheldon, which is still, as you said, still in the consciousness. Young Sheldon, still a big hit for CBS. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that in terms of like believability, but it's just kind of funny seeing him like really go for it, and then you have Rock Hudson just kind of playing it straight the whole time.
Yeah,
So, but on the other hand, sometimes he would liven it up more than anyone else around him. So I wonder what the show would have been like if everyone else was kind of on that wavelength as well. And I don't know, but yeah, I didn't mind it, but I definitely noticed it. So maybe that, I don't know if that matters, but it stood out.
did you feel like Murphy was trying to say something by, Jack and Rock Hudson both being played as these like very dopey, almost like idiotic, stupid characters? Like they were both pretty done, like thick, I guess might be a good way to put it in the head.
uh, yeah, that's interesting because along those lines, I was expecting Jack to not like have the happy ending, but he does.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the hit movie. He's part of the it couple, you know? And it's kind of all setting it up. It's like, oh, here's Jack. Well, Jack's this really handsome, straight white guy. He's already married, and maybe the wife thing won't work out, but Jack's fine. But like, it almost wasn't cutting enough,
Yeah.
like in terms of what it was trying to say, and that's okay. Again, it was enjoyable, but yeah, it's funny. There's actually a lot to chew on with this show. Only 7 episodes.